Matthew Disher here, host of the American Guns Podcast, reminding you that the show that you are listening to is part of a network of shows. All pro-freedom content, all great stuff. So check us out at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, a man for whom getting stuck in traffic was the only thing worse than sticking around for day one of nationals, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. You've heard me and some of the guests on the show talk about the benefits of dry fire. It's the easiest, most inexpensive way to get better as a shooter. But it's got some drawbacks. One of those being that because you don't actually see where your shots are hitting, you're just pointing at a target, you don't know if you're repeatedly practicing bad technique. So one thing you can do is use a laser bullet. But if you use a laser bullet by itself, you can be tempted to peek at your target to watch the little red dot show up. But now you can use the iTarget Pro system. It gives you instant feedback and lets you see exactly where you're hitting. Just place your phone in this iTarget sled, point the camera at the target. The app then monitors your target for hits from the laser bullet and maps them on the screen, showing you exactly where you shot. It's really cool. Just watch your sights like you normally would. Let the app do the rest. iTarget Pro is available for Android and Apple phones. Laser bullets are available in all of the popular pistol calibers, 9mm, 45, 40 Smith & Wesson, 38 Special. iTarget Pro offers you a safe and effective dry fire training tool that will make your training fun again. Check it out at itargetpro.com. Our special guest today is best known to his friends as Pops. Lewis Freeman from White Oak, Texas is our guest. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Lloyd. I think I'm glad to be here.
We'll find out after a couple of questions.
You bet.
Well, tell everybody a little about yourself, what you do for a living there in White Oak.
Well, I've been retired for about 9 years, almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years in May. And when I retired, I became a range rat. I had a membership at a local range, and I just started living there. So I started out as a volunteer range officer, and now I'm the range manager. So I work about 4 hours a day, and not a full-time job, but it keeps me pretty busy.
Keeps you on the range near the guns. That's nice.
Yeah, I just don't get to shoot as much as I'd like to. Other things to do in the afternoons.
Yep. So tell us about your background with guns. Growing up in that part of East Texas, I guess, introduced to guns early on as a kid, or is that something that you picked up later?
Yeah, I was introduced to guns probably my best memory is about 5 years old when I tried to get my dad's police gun off the hook on the back of the bedroom door. And that's when my education into guns and safety started. And spent most of my childhood and early adulthood doing a lot of squirrel and deer hunting, things like that. And I didn't really get into shooting pistols until about the time I retired a few years ago.
Really?
My dad always had guns around the house. And, I got a BB gun when I was like 6.
Right.
Next year, I got a pellet gun. And next year, I got a .22. And the next year, we moved to a shotgun. So just a natural progression. But the handgun part was conspicuously absent till I was probably about 20 years old. And my dad started buying handguns, and we'd go out and shoot a little bit. But, spending most of my adult life working, making a living, taking care of wife and kids, I didn't really have a lot of time, and probably didn't have a lot of money either to pursue that. So after I retired, I just decided to make up for lost time.
I'd say. So how did you get What was the interest in? I know you go to things like the tactical conference in every year, and so you're not just shooting competition. You're involved with handguns at a different level. What was the interest and the attraction to handguns? What got you? I mean, after all those years, why pick up the handguns and really get serious with them?
Well, it's kind of a strange story. My ex-wife and I got divorced in 2007, and I found all of a sudden I had disposable income and free time. Kids were grown, so I went out and bought a handgun, got a concealed carry license, and just started hanging out at the range, just shooting paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess along about 2010, the president of our range brought IDPA, USPSA, and Steel Challenge all to our range at one time. So at the end of the first month, I had shot each one of those matches, and I was hooked. I just jumped in whole hog.
What was the first gun, and what division did you start out in?
My first gun was a Springfield Armory XD9.
Okay.
I shot SSP with that for a while, and then I started experimenting with more guns. I know a lot of my trainer friends really give a lot of bad press to XDs because they're the guns that fail in a lot of their classes, but I've had really good luck with them over the years. So that's where I got started.
What do you remember about those first matches, the first local matches there at your club?
That I was not very good. I spent a lot of time on the square range shooting at a stationary target, target practice type stuff, and that did not prepare me very well for shooting IDPA or USPSA either, for that matter. So, that was my takeaway from the first match. Even though I loved it, I was not very good at it, and I decided then it was time to get serious about it, and actually spent a lot of time practicing back in those days.
So you're retired. You've got plenty of time to practice. What was a lot of people, they have that humbling first experience and they never come back. You had time and availability of the range. What did it take for you? How did your practice routine change so that you saw improvement?
Well, I started working on trying to get a little faster and still maintain some accuracy. And then I started taking advantage of some training classes that were strictly self-defense oriented. And after taking some of those, it seemed to really help in the way I was shooting, and it worked out really well.
That's interesting because a lot of people will say there's a difference between, IDPA being a game and training for self-defense, but there's a lot that carries over. You'll run into instructors, some who will say, "Oh, you're playing that game, it's going to get you killed in the streets." What kinds of things did you take away from those training classes that improved your shooting as a competitive shooter?
Well, I've been fortunate enough that, most of the instructors that I've taken classes from have really stressed, get out and shoot some competitions. Get used to shooting that gun fast. Almost every one of them, they don't just teach you, draw your gun, shoot one shot, you're done, it's all over with, because supposedly, and I don't know this for a fact, but supposedly in real life, that's not the way it works. Shoot 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
That was the kind of the big thing that I had to work on a lot was getting the gun out of the holster on target quickly and shooting multiple shots. Probably the second most important thing was the transition from target to target.
All right. So how long after that first home club match and that humbling experience, how long before you got up the nerve and decided you would shoot a sanctioned match, and where was it?
Well, we started shooting in our club in the fall of 2010. And the next spring, several of us, I used to go up and shoot with the Collin County bunch every once in a while. And several of us got together and decided we would go to Lubbock, Texas, which is about a 7-hour drive from White Oak, and shoot a sanctioned match. And, I had 2 or 3 friends in Collin County that were just dyed in the wool gamers. And they were, "Oh, you got to go shoot a sanctioned match. you'll have fun and you'll be hooked forever. So we drove 7 hours up there and shot I think it was a 9-stage match at an indoor range, the Patriot gun range up there. And talk about a humbling experience. That was pretty humbling. It was a ton of fun. And other than 14 hours on the road, I thought, well, I'll do this again. So luckily, we didn't have to go that far for the next match.
Now, what divisions are you competing in these days? And I know you've also competed with the wheel guns. So talk about that as well.
Well, I had this theory a few years back that the only way to get better was to shoot one gun for a whole season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in 2014, I got a Smith & Wesson 686 SSR, and I decided I'd run that gun all year long. And I did reasonably well with it, but of course you have to understand there's not that many revolver shooters, so I didn't have to beat a bunch of people to do really well.
Right. You're not going to get any match bumps, but you're not going to have a whole lot of competition for the trophies.
Well, that's true. Usually when I go to like the Arkansas matchup in Arkansas, the Mississippi State, places like that, I'd only have to beat 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people at the most. And I got pretty lucky, and I did that a lot. But I think the highlight of the year was at Nationals. I actually finished second. Of course, there were only 4 people in the division.
Mm-hmm.
Finished second, and that's when they changed the awards criteria, and I didn't get anything to show for it other than just to walk away knowing that I was the second best shooter that weekend.
So talk about shooting the revolver. We've had a few people on who shoot revolver a bit. Talk about how shooting revolver affects your shooting with a semi-auto. Some people come to the semi-autos first, and then they find the transition to revolver is more difficult. Some will tell me, like Grant Cunningham would say, the transition from revolver to semi-auto is easier. What was that transition like, and how did shooting a revolver for an entire year affect your shooting with the semi-auto?
Well, with a revolver, you don't have a lot of extra rounds to use on a stage. And it kind of, I think it really made me a more accurate shooter.
Mm-hmm.
It slowed me down a bit, but I'm old and I'm slow anyway, so that's no big But I think it really helped me. When I transitioned back to a semi-automatic the next season, I was a whole lot more accurate, and I could call my shots better. And I knew immediately when I pulled that trigger whether I had yanked on that thing instead of pressing it,
mm-hmm.
or if I just missed the shot for some other reason.
Gotcha. So, what? How many sanctioned matches are you shooting a year nowadays?
Probably about 6 or so. I've had some health issues over the last few years, and it kind of fell by the wayside. And last year was kind of trying to get back into where I could physically deal with a 12-stage match and be able to walk the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking this year is going to be a whole lot better. I'm already signed up for Louisiana State and Silver Dollar and the Gulf Coast Regional, as well as the Texas State match. And I'm thinking real hard about going to Arkansas for their match in April. So I'm planning on a good year this year. It may be 7 or 8 by the time the year is over.
Nice. Do you have any, thinking back over the years since 2010, have you got any memories of a particular match that you performed really well in, or that was really challenging or a lot of fun, or that you absolutely hated, or just, a fun memory from the past 8 years that you could share with us?
Well, I got a lot of memories. I can't really, I don't know if I could really catalog them too well, but excuse me, that first match we shot up in Lubbock. I found out then that I wasn't really dialed in too well. We had a stage that we were lying on a sleeping bag on our back. And when the buzzer went off, you had to roll over, retrieve your gun, and you had, I think there were 3 targets down range, and you had to shoot them in tack sequence.
Ugh.
Okay, this was a long time ago. You could still have that. And so the last thing the safety officer said to me before he hit the buzzer was, "Don't forget, it's tack sequence." The buzzer went off. I rolled over, grabbed my gun, and immediately dumped 2 rounds in the first target. I had been schooled well enough by my friends who I think were certified gamers that I just went ahead and shot everything twice and got it over. But yeah, that was my first procedural, and that was in my first match. As far as matches where we've shot some interesting stages, I think the Subway stage here a couple of years ago I think it was at the Worlds, was a really challenging stage. And you had Matt Childress on a while back, and Matt just blazed through that stage. And I didn't shoot it near as well as he did, but it was a really fun stage because you had so many moving targets in a short time to hit a couple of them. And then I think last year's match at M160, Boar Angels match.
Oh, yeah.
Really liked that match. There was a lot of things that I hadn't seen before, like the table stage that was the platform was mounted on springs.
Right.
I remember that one particularly because there was a swinger that moved incredibly fast on the right side of the stage. And after you had to get up and get everything to wiggling around on you, you had to sit back down and shoot that swinger. I shot it 4 times. 3 of them were almost in the same hole. And of course, they were all 1 down. And then I had 1 in the 0 down zone. So, yeah, it'll stick with me a long time, I think.
What kind of stages do you like? Do you like lots of movement? Do you like lots of moving targets? Do you like, run and gun, wide open kind of, round dump targets or stages? Or do you like really technical things where you have to plan them out and think them through really carefully?
Well, I'm getting a little old and decrepit, and I don't like to run gun stuff too much anymore, but I don't like everything to be stand and deliver either.
Right.
I've been shooting CCP for the last year or so, and I shoot CDP in a lot of sanctioned matches. I'm trying to give some guys a little help getting that bump from expert to master. And so the planning, the strategy comes into play when you're only dealing with 9 rounds to start and 8 rounds on every reload. So a lot of round dumping going on, trying to figure out where is the best place to get the reload. And I've kind of got to where I like those type of stages.
When I was talking with Kitty Richards recently, and she asked, what my plans were for next year, and I talked about wanting to shoot different divisions. You've shot SSP, ESP, CDP, CCP, and Revolver. Talk about what I find fun about IDPA. One of the things is the diversity of the different divisions and the challenges that they present. I don't have a whole lot of experience with some of those divisions, and I'm hoping to experience them this year. Talk about some of those differences and how you can go from one division to another with a very similar gun, but the strategy completely changes.
Well, it's all the round count. With a revolver, you got 6 rounds. And, like I said earlier, you can't afford to miss. You can't be taking a lot of extra shots. I mean, you have to call your shot and move on.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much a constant with the revolvers. With the ESP and SSP, you've got 11 rounds to deal with. It gives you a little more latitude. In the old days, round dumping was a forbidden thing.
Right.
Now, as long as you're shooting at the target, nobody really cares. So you can still figure out where those reloads are going to help you the most. CCP and CDP, you're back into the game to where you've only got a few rounds and you have to make good use of all of them. So I'm going to shoot SSP Expert at Louisiana State with an oddball gun, a Canic P120. Right. I hadn't shot SSP in probably 6 or 7 years, but we're going to try it again, and I'm going to go back to CDP for pretty much all the rest of the sanctioned matches for the year.
Nice. What's the chosen firearm for CDP?
I've been shooting an XDM 5.25 inch 45,
mm-hmm.
and maybe it's just in my head, but I think I shoot that gun pretty well. I'm semi-competitive in that division and with that gun, so I'm going to stick with it. Now, I said earlier that a lot of the trainers say those guns fail a lot, and I've never had a problem until Rose City this year. Very last stage, I couldn't get around a chamber on a empty chamber reload.
Oh,
I just finally gave up after I shot 3 or 4 targets and just told the SO, I said, I'm done. I tried 3 or 4 things and it wouldn't work. Excuse me. I found out later that the notch for the slide stop had just worn out from all the shooting, and it wound it off, and it wasn't allowing the gun to lock back far enough to chamber that round. It was kicking it straight up and jamming every time.
oh,
Got a new slide on it, and we're going to run it again and see what happens.
all right. Well, this next question is one that I ask, and about 1 in 4 makes it onto the show because the answers are usually pretty boring, but every now and then you get a gem. Besides all the standard stuff that you take, everybody takes to the range, the gun, the holster, and the mag carriers and ammo and all that stuff, what's the one item or 2 items that you always make sure that you have in your range bag for a match, and why?
Gosh, that's a it's a question I hadn't thought about, and I'm probably going to give you a boring answer that'll never make the cut. I've got the one thing I carry to every match that I've never needed it, but it's there if I need it, is a little toolkit, a little gunsmith toolkit. I don't carry extra parts for the guns, but I carry that in case there's something I might need to work on. But other than that, I just carry the same old stuff everybody else carries.
Right. That'll work. I guess why I ask is because every now and then, like I said, every now and then you get a gem of an answer that's really bizarre, like pickle salt or something, odd.
Well, now that you mentioned that, I do carry some bottles of pickle juice around. I started doing that in the last year or so.
Really?
Everybody carries the same thing. You got extra batteries for your hearing protection, and you got an extra pair of eyewear, things like that. I'm a Gene Simmons disciple, and I carry, like when I shoot my XD M45, I've probably got 25 magazines that are loaded when the match starts. So I don't have to do much reloading along the way. I guess that's one thing I do tend to carry is way too many magazines.
What's the story behind the pickle juice?
I started, this last year, I just didn't seem to have any energy, and, muscles were getting tired and sore and stiff during the match. And a couple of my buddies, Gene being one of them, they just believe pickle juice is a cure-all for everything. So I started carrying some with me, and it actually does seem to kind of give me a little pick-me-up there somewhere along the way. So just started doing it every match.
All right. Interesting. Well, as we kind of wind this down, what is it about, through all the health issues that you've dealt with, what is it that keeps you doing this? I'm glad you are, but what is it that motivates you to continue to come out to the range, to work to get better every day, and to make these trips to these sanctioned matches around the region? What is it you love about IDPA so much?
Well, another boring answer, I think, but almost every person you had on here, and maybe all of them, might have missed 1 or 2, but everybody says it's because of the people. And that is a huge part of it. I started this trying to get better with the gun that I carry every day, and I still use it for that to a certain extent. But the people that you come in contact with, you make pretty much lifelong friends everywhere you go. It's just amazing how good the people in IDPA are. Here a few years ago, I think it was in September. It was either Nationals or Worlds. I can't remember. But it was in 2015, and I had just had brain surgery in about the middle of July. And so the middle of September, I'm there shooting a national match. And Gene stopped Brian Erler, who was the match director, and said, look, here's the deal. Lewis is not pasting anything. We're going to pace for it. And Brian said, and we told him what the deal was, and he said, that's not a problem. And he told the guy that was driving his golf cart, he said, give Lewis your phone number. If you need transportation or anything, you call this guy. He didn't have to do that.
No. Yeah. Just great people in the sport. There's no question. No question at all. I know there was one other thing I wanted to ask you to do. Give a shout out to your home club. Tell us a little about your home club and what makes it great.
Well, I shoot at East Texas Rifle and Pistol Club in Longview, and we started IDPA in 2010, and I took it over about 6 months after we started at the range. And I've been kind of the guy in charge, even though I've had a lot of people step up and help us keep running when I couldn't physically do it. But we're the only outdoor range in the area. We have 11 ranges. We have 2 and 300 yard pistol range, and then we have a bunch of 2 and 300 yard rifle range. And we have a lot of pistol ranges, and we run IDPA and Steel Challenge matches every month. It's a great place to hang out, and it's become my home away from home over the years.
Absolutely. I've had the pleasure of shooting with a bunch of your club members, and the pleasure of getting to know you, and I really do appreciate you coming on the show and taking a little bit of your time, and I look forward to seeing you at a match not long from now.
I'm pretty sure we'll run into each other somewhere down the road.
Thanks, Lewis.
You bet. Thank you, Lloyd.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.